Thank you, Dr. Englander, for agreeing to be interviewed as part of the S Word, the role of schools in preventing suicide. I think your knowledge today is really going to help educators learn more about bullying and cyberbullying among youth. So my first question is, could you explain and define what bullying and cyberbullying is? I mean, what should educators be looking for?
Bullying is really a type of abuse behavior that happens traditionally between kids, and it involves 4 characteristics. Bullying is something that happens repetitively. It's not being mean one time or being cranky or calling somebody a name thoughtlessly. It has to be intentional. It can't be an accident. And there has to be a power imbalance between the kids, meaning that the child who's doing the bullying has to be more powerful than the target, who often feels like they can't defend themselves. The 4th characteristic is that the target has to care. They have to actually mind that the bullying's happening. Sometimes bullies do try to pick on kids, but the target doesn't mind. And in that case, we wouldn't characterize that as bullying or cyberbullying.
Okay, so are you saying cyberbullying is different than bullying?
Cyberbullying is often thought of as bullying that just happens in an electronic environment, in a digital environment. And that is true. There are cases online and through cell phones where kids do bully each other. But a lot of what happens online doesn't really fit that definition very well. And that's one of the first things that educators need to be aware of. There are a lot of problems that happen between kids socially online. But these problems may or may not be actually bullying. However, they can still be very traumatic, and it's important not to dismiss things just because you're not sure if they really fit in the rubric of bullying. The other thing to be aware of when it comes to bullying is that most of the behaviors that are used today are not going to be obvious. So it's not going to be a situation where a child is physically attacking another child or something that you couldn't really miss. It's going to be more psychological, and it's going to be very, very easy to miss these kinds of behaviors. One of the things that we found when it comes to bullying, and if you look at the impact on children in the research, it almost doesn't matter what the behavior is that's used to bully somebody. What matters is the repetition. So when things happen to a target over and over again, that's when they start to become really traumatized by it. And that's the thing to look for. So you're looking for cases where you see kids who are really being targeted over and over again. And don't worry too much about asking yourself, is this bullying or isn't it bullying? Instead, what you really want to do is respond to inappropriate social behaviors without concerning yourself about definitions.
Thank you for that explanation. I think I understand what you're saying more. Are you also saying that young people that are bullied are at an increased risk for suicide? Does that also mean the bully is at increased risk as well?
It's important to understand that in bullying situations, both of the children involved are really at risk. The children who are engaging in these problem social behaviors are doing it as a way of engaging the adults in their environment. It's kind of a dysfunctional way of getting attention and getting the help that they need. And it's very important to recognize that. I think most schools place the target at first priority, and that's probably very appropriate to do. But it is also important to remember that there's another child involved here who really is acting out as a way of asking for help. And it's important to remember that and to respond to that.
Dr. Englander, as you know, there's a lot of stuff in the media about youth being bullied. Every time you turn on the television, it seems like there's a new news story. So what do you say about some of these reports? Are they true? Should we listen to them?
In the media, there have been a number of high-profile cases where children have died by suicide, and bullying has been one of the issues in their history that has been highlighted. Sometimes this can lead to the misconception that bullying can take a child who's functioning very, very well and healthily and somehow lead them to a really, really serious and tragic outcome. And it's important to understand that most of the children who have died by suicide after being bullied had multiple points of vulnerability. It really was not a simple issue, and bullying certainly can contribute to depression. I think it's not uncommon for it to contribute to depression and anxiety and other kinds of problems. But it is important to remember that issues like serious depression or even suicide are very complicated ones. And children who are functioning well are usually going, with some help and support, going to be able to cope with bullying and cyberbullying.
Thank you again, Dr. Englander, for agreeing to be interviewed for the S Word, the role of schools in preventing suicide. I think I speak for everyone when I say you've really helped increase our understanding and knowledge about bullying and cyberbullying behaviors. Edgar is in 4th grade and is much taller and heavier than most of his peers. However, because he has a tremendous sense of humor, he is very well liked and very popular amongst his classmates. One day during recess, during a game of dodgeball, Edgar trips on the ball and falls down. Stephen, a 5th grader, yells, "Look at the beach whale on the playground!" And Stephen and the other 5th graders with him laugh. Edgar turns red, but he picks himself up and he starts to get ready to play again. Several of Edgar's friends, though, they get angry and they tell Stephen and his friends to shut up. A shouting match ensues until the teacher comes over to break it up.